Brent Venables said, "I'm him."
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. The all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners had their media day for spring ball on Wednesday, and there were a lot of interesting nuggets and quotes that came out of that. But the first one, Jay, off the top, he was asked why he's calling the defense, and he said, "Because I'm good at it."
Probably the best, great mic drop out there. And I love that he finished with it and reminded everybody I've been coaching for my job for 30 years, or at least having the urgency of coaching for his job. But yeah, he didn't lie. I mean, he is really good at it. He's infamous for it. He's been doing it for, 30 years, and he's been fantastic at it, or at least 20-something years. And so we've seen Brent Venables be able to be successful and be really good at it. And so I'm excited that he's going to be running the play call. But the thing that jumped out to me the most to go with that, John, is that Brent Venables talked about Nate Dreiling as well as Wes Goodwin coming in as his linebacker coaches. And he tried to get Wes in when he first started his inaugural coaching staff. Was not able to lure him over, but he pointed out he'll be running with the Cheetahs, and at the same time, you think about it, he's called defenses before, so he'll be there to help with prepping. And then Nate Dreiling was so excited about coming to Norman, he said, "Hey, I'll walk to Norman if you want me to. Just let me know when." He stepped away from a DC job at Arkansas State, which is kind of fascinating. But hey, you got to love the fact and the excitement from those dudes wanting to work with Brent Venables again.
Yeah, I think he also said that he didn't care about the money. He
didn't care about the money at all.
To Oklahoma. That just goes to show what the difference in an opportunity is. No disrespect to Arkansas State intended here, but to be the defensive coordinator there versus being a linebackers coach at a place like Oklahoma, that just goes to show you the big difference there. He was also asked about the idea of managing the football game from being the defensive play caller and the head coach. And I thought his response was relevant in that, hey, back in 2023, I did it. And we didn't have as much success as we would have liked to have. At the same time, they were still building that defense and building it, but they were significantly better than what they were in 2022, largely probably because Brent Venables was calling the defense. But we're starting to see the culmination of what the vision is for the defense after the 2024 season and moving forward. But with Brent Venables calling the defense, I don't think there should be any concern
at all. Like, that's what you brought Brent Venables for. Not really to call the defense, but to build a good defense. And his goal was to be able to hand that off. That was why Zach Alley was here. But with Zach, I think, him wanting to run more of a 3-3-5 or a 3 safety high in comparison to running a 4-man front that you really have to do a lot more of here in the SEC, his fit's probably going to be better at West Virginia, where he decided to go and be able to run the same defense that he ran when he was at Jacksonville State. I think Nate Dreiling is going to be your next potential defensive coordinator here at Oklahoma, one that'll potentially step up to take the role, because I think that's exactly what Brent Venables is trying to build. Or it could be Wes. Wes wasn't awful at Clemson. He just wasn't as good as he was when Brent Venables was there with him. And so I think them two working in tandem, you'll be able to see some special stuff. I think, if anything, what I'm ready to see, the recruiting. I want to see what Wes can bring here to Oklahoma at linebacker, because we kind of haven't really recruited a linebacker in a bit. We got Marcus James, which I like. I think he's going to be good at 6'3", 220 pounds as a, high schooler. I think that he could be developed into something, but that's it. Kind of need some more linebackers.
Yeah, you're pretty light at linebacker right now. You've done a great job at defensive back. You've done a great job along the defensive line, but you're going to have to find some guys to fortify that linebacker unit, because you're going to start getting pretty thin over the next couple of years if you don't. The other thing I thought was really intriguing, and you shared this with me, via text earlier in the day, was just Brent Venables realizing that the business side of where college football is in regards to negotiating NIL, talking about player valuation, quote unquote, that part was still really difficult. And bringing in a guy like Jim Nagy is going to help kind of fortify their process as they try to recruit players and they get involved in the financial aspects of that.
Exactly. The fact that he was able to admit that was a struggle, because I mean, his quote was, it's tough to, there was no blueprint coming into this, that, everything was kind of, we all thrusted into it and we were trying to figure it out, and having that conversation with 18, 19, 20-year-olds around valuation ain't the easiest thing, because, I mean, if you truly think about it, most 17, 18, and 19-year-olds don't really understand how valuations actually work, especially when it comes to in comparison to revenue. So, a lot of them have higher expectations than what they actually get. I mean, I still think that a lot of the NIL numbers that's thrown around are ridiculous. I think they're a lot higher than what they really are, but they sound good. So, rounding that number up to $1 million, $1.5 million, it sounds a lot better than saying, $625K. But I mean, it's still a lot of money, as it's ballooned over the last few years. But I do appreciate the fact that he was able to admit that, yeah, I was wrong there. That's not something I was good at, and we need to fix that. And that's the purpose of having a guy like Jim Nagy.
Well, and not having 30 years of salary cap information to work off of like the NFL has, or the NBA or the NHL, that makes it all new territory for everybody. And so if you're behind at all on it, you're going to be behind.
Yeah.
And it's going to be difficult to know where you need to emphasize your resources if you don't know. And so this is part of the evolution of the program, is trying to figure out, okay, where do we want to spend our resources the most? And I think they're going to use some of a similar model that the NFL uses with the money 5 positions, the quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback, edge rusher, and offensive tackle. But you might see like maybe they place more value on a defensive tackle versus a cornerback, or
exactly,
things like that. So I think there will be a slight adjustments for the college game, but they're going to have positions that they prioritize a little bit more than others at the collegiate level.
Yeah, and Nagy talked about that, and we'll talk about that in the next segment or whatnot. But I do like that getting Nagy in, as well as Nate Dreiling, and the way they commented about Oklahoma really tells you the brand is still strong. Yeah, we've had a couple of down years and one good year in between, but it doesn't mean that Oklahoma's done, right? It's not. That doesn't mean that we're the new Nebraska, as everyone would love to just name us to be. No, we just had to go at a different and an unconventional way in comparison. I mean, I've always said that probably the biggest flaw that Brent Venables had coming here was thinking that he was going to be able to start this team up without taking any transfers from his former employer. And I get, you want to make sure that you don't quote unquote burn bridges, or you don't want to be that guy. But at the same time, if you got elite talent that says, hey, no, coach, we came to play for you and I want to follow you, you kind of are obligated to accept them, at least let them, make the decision. Don't poach them. But if they tell you, hey, coach, I want to follow, you kind of shouldn't stop them, mainly because that, to me, held him back one full year. You bring in some of those players and you process some of the other ones out earlier, you probably look a lot different. 7-6 looks better than 6-7 every single time, every way from Thursday. You do that, it's a different team, and I think you win a lot more games. Heck, you may even get yourself another quarterback in, to be behind Dylan Gabriel. So if he got hurt, you can replace him. But I digress. Let me get off my soapbox. The key thing here is, though, John, is that Brent Venables is putting the pieces together again. That should hopefully lead to success. But I do think that him being a part of the process of luring Jim Nagy there and then getting Nate Dreiling along with Wes Goodwin, I think that that's going to be the big change that we need for Oklahoma, and we should be able to see some success. He talked about injuries as well, which, buddy, that's going to be a whole nother episode.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about the injuries that are keeping guys out of spring ball that Brent Venables discussed. We'll talk about that on our next episode. But coming up, we'll discuss what Jim Nagy had to say, John Mateer's first time in front of the media as well. And a little bit later, Oklahoma got a big win over Missouri. Are they dancing? I think they're dancing. We'll discuss all that coming up here on Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart for the Armada Team of the Week. It's brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase their strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week are the Houston Cougars, as brought to you by Nissan Armada and Locked On College Basketball. Since joining the Big 12 last season, the Cougars have gone a combined 33-4 in conference games, winning the regular season title by multiple games both years. There's no team in college basketball that more capably embodies the rugged Armada than Kelvin Sampson's squad. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Houston Cougars have done here. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. That's NissanUSA.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, coming up, we'll discuss Oklahoma's big 12-point win over Mizzou and if they're going to be dancing. But Jay, what stood out to you the most from John Mateer's meeting with the media?
So I think the first thing was Brent Venables in his introduction about him. He said, and I quote, he's got a competitive maturity to him and competitive toughness. He's consistent. He likes the locker room. He's a football junkie, a gym rat. He blended in and transitioned incredibly well. All I've heard is that everyone has loved John Mateer so far. All I've been hearing is that he's a leader. I've been hearing that people are raving about him. He is the name that is really jumping out. And we'll talk about him more in detail on that. But when he went through his interview process, they asked him about like Heisman, the Heisman Park and all the traditions of Oklahoma. And he was like, yeah, it's cool. I don't really think about it every day or anything like that. The big thing for me is winning games. I just got to win. Some of that stuff comes with winning. But the most important thing right now is to win games. Sold your boy on it. I'm sold. I'll take 2 John Mateers now because you need a guy that's going to be focused on that stuff. Like there is so much glit and glamour when it comes to Oklahoma. It's, just Oklahoma, football in general. And he knows that he's going to have to embrace it. He said it's a great opportunity and it's a blessing. And he talked about just a privilege of being able to wear the crimson and cream and basically be the starting quarterback. He knows that the pressure is going to be heavy on his shoulders, but I love the fact that he's embracing it. And he also points out that we got to win games, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me is when he kind of addressed the idea that he's got swag.
Yeah.
People talk about how he plays with a swagger, things like that. And he just brought it back to, I just play football. I have the ball in my hand every play. I get the opportunity to do something with it. That camera's on me all the time. So I guess I have swag. Some people will say I have toughness. I just feel like I have an obligation to give everything I have for my teammates. That was the one right there that sold me. It's like, I'm going to give it all. And it's not just all in a game. It's all on the practice field. It's all in the extra workouts. And that's the thing he also discussed is like, the excitement that people had to go do extra stuff away from the workouts, away from the film room, away from the practice field, going and get the extra work in. I think that's showing you, okay, they're ready to rally behind this guy as QB1.
Yeah. And that the players really love him. And it sounds like they adore him and enjoy him just as a person. And he's gravitated. A lot of players have gravitated to him. You can see it in him doing all the, the PR, I guess you could call it, going to all the games and sitting in front row, being at gymnastics, women basketball, men's. Like he's doing like the PR congressman, laps. He's going everywhere. But I don't think he's doing it just because he's trying to, make it look like it's all publicity. I think he enjoys being a part of it. I mean, he comes from Washington State where they do a lot of stuff like that. Same thing down there at Little Elm. You can tell that that's the type of guy he is, that, they all support each other and they support the sports of the school. And granted, what else did you do in Pullman? If you want me to be absolutely honest, there's a lot going on up there in Pullman, Washington, no shade to y'all, but I'm just saying, what else are you doing besides driving to Idaho I don't know what you can do in Idaho either, but I
You
digress.
just do a lot of hiking. It's beautiful
Yeah.
out there. If you haven't gone up to the skinny part of Idaho, it's
Good
fantastic.
stuff, good mountain stuff,
Beautiful.
good mountain climb. I
Absolutely
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It's potatoes up there too, right? Got a whole bunch of potatoes.
Something.
That's what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
anyway, Mateer gives us he gives off that aura, that swagger, that moxie that everyone's excited about. And so, he talked about that, and then, some of the other stuff, he just really talked about, being excited to be here. We talked about this, I think we talked about this last episode, but just the fact that they had that video that came out and they asked the players about their favorite jerseys or whatnot. And everybody talked about like the icy whites, the crimson and all of that. But the fact that he went off the rail and was like, you know what? I like the wood grain. The wood grain was my favorite. How old is that jersey? Like that was some years ago. That shows you that he wasn't lying when he said that he's a fan of Oklahoma. He always wanted to play at Oklahoma. That's always a dream of his or whatnot. He's now living that. And I think that he's not going to take that for granted. He's going to show up and show out.
Yeah, and Jim Nagy also spoke with the media on Wednesday as well. And I think some of what he had to say is going to be intriguing, not just for this year, but really more so for the future of the program, because much of what he's been brought in to do is player evaluation. And the thing that really stood out the most and stuck out was when he talked about, I'm not going to be just throwing every single guy at the coaches. I'm going to be bringing players to the coaches that are going to be fits for the program and that they need to see.
They're going to be working together.
Yeah.
As a team, as a connection. And I love hearing that. One thing, somebody asked me yesterday, one question I got was, how soon do we think we'll see Nagy's imprint and his effect on the roster? And you want me to be honest, John? Spring portal. I think you might see some of Jim Nagy there in the spring portal as he's evaluating the roster, understanding what we have, understanding what we need, and they start making some, going after some players. I truly believe that spring portal, you may see Nagy's effect. You may see him go get a diamond in the rough that nobody thought about, because that's kind of the thing I think about with adding Nagy to this staff with Brent Venables and them is he's going to have he has so many connections with G5s and FCS coaches, agents, and P4s that can tell them, hey, this kid here is going to be special, needs a good home. You guys can turn him into a monster. He'll be able to see that. Plus, he said one other thing too, which, is kind of like a running joke right now. He prefers to be in the dark watching tape, in a dark room watching tape. I mean, yes, yeah, pause, I guess. But for the most part, that means that he thoroughly enjoys watching film and watching and evaluating players. He even went in and talked about the hierarchy and how they would potentially be set up, additional scouts that should have NFL experience to be able to help evaluate these players. And John, just as you said, his goal he's not going to just throw people down their throats, right? After these players, you got to take them. It's going to be a collaboration of, does this player make sense for Oklahoma and the SEC? And I think that that's probably what we've been needing, because now Brent Venables can focus on football and focus on evaluating talent and not to be too concerned about NIL.
Yeah, being able to take some of the business aspects off of the coach's plate, I think is going to help. And I mean, that's the part that the coaches are least comfortable with in the modern era of college football, is the NIL part of this, the rev sharing part of this. So now Brent Venables doesn't have to worry about that. He can just go coach football. He can develop his defense. He can develop the culture aspect for what he wants his program to look like. And he can let Jim Nagy do all the other stuff, and his assistant GMs, or whatever their titles are going to be, negotiating those rev share and NIL deals through the collectives and making it all work. And then this is another really good quote. We're going to be a traits-driven organization, traits and instincts and makeup. So looking for guys that have great athleticism, are good football players, and are the right kind of people. I mean, not so complicated.
Nope. Not so complicated at all. They're going to go for guys that make sense for this organization. I love hearing that. That gives me hope. That gives me a reason to be patient, because as they completely reevaluate top to bottom and focus on what makes the most sense, I think we're going to go out there and get players that's going to be good. I don't think we're going to go bargain shopping at all. I think we're going to go after the talent that makes the most sense for Oklahoma and playing in the SEC, which means we're going to go for good players.
Well, and on that note, one thing we forgot to mention from Brent Venables was the stat he shared that 1 in 4 players at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis this past week were either a Group of 4 or FCS player, or a Group of 4 FCS player transferred to a Group of 5, or sorry, Power 4
P4,
program.
yeah.
So they started out at a lower level, a la Keontez Lewis, Javonte Gibson, Kennesaw State guys, and then they emerged to be Power 4 players. Quite intriguing there, Jay. Hey,
Very.
Another thing that's intriguing, the Oklahoma Sooners might have punched their ticket to the big dance with a big win over Mizzou. Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners got a big win over number 15 Missouri on Wednesday night, 96-84. And this was a game that Oklahoma led by as many as 14 in the first half, 13 by halftime, and got another big game out of Jeremiah Fears, who scored a career high 31 points. Sam Godwin was a big part of the start for Oklahoma, scoring 8 of their first 10. And he had 10 points in the first half before leaving with an injury that had him sidelined the rest of the game.
Yeah, they balled out. And you know what's fascinating too? So they started the game off in the first 12 minutes, 75% from the floor. Like where has this been? Outside of non-con. And I guess this game and, one other SEC game that we saw them go out there and just dominate a team that they probably shouldn't have beat. Like, where has this been? Like, this is the Mississippi State game all over again. It's like, wow, y'all just really came out here and ball. Could have done it against Kentucky, just couldn't, close it out. But they showed up and showed out. I mean, Missouri blew them out there in Missouri the first time we played. And then we came in here and we cooked them. Now, at this point, like you said, this may have punched them into the tournament. They brackets, and I saw one where they were still the last team in. And this win may have pushed them to the point where they're at the top of the last teams in, regardless of what happens in Texas on Saturday. They may actually be in the tournament now.
I think this did enough. They were a bubble team, but I felt like if they got one more win, especially a ranked win, it would be enough to get them in. They've got 4 quad 1 wins, and I think that's going to be enough. And especially if they can go beat Texas on Saturday in Austin, that'll definitely seal the deal for them, because they're playing good ball over the last few weeks. It's just been some heartbreaking losses in the final minute that have kind of sunk them against Ole Miss, against Kentucky. It was kind of a rough week last week, but they bounced back in a big way with this win, especially losing Sam Godwin after just 11 minutes of game action. And then Muhammad Wegi, what a great game for him. There was a point in time at about the 7-minute mark of the second half where Mizzou's kind of starting to make a run. They're making a push to get this thing closer. They get within 9, and Wegi scores 6 straight points for the Sooners. He provided that spark off the bench.
And that's what they needed. And you could tell that no matter how much we criticize, or just flat out hate on Porter Moser, there's one thing you can't say, that his teams don't play hard.
No, they're playing hard.
I'm trying to figure out how he ain't lost a team yet. I'm being for real, John. How has he not lost the team with the way they lose these games in so many heartbreaking fashions? It's just oh my goodness, it's just painful. You would think that these boys would quit, but they don't. They keep playing hard, and they end up with wins like this against Missouri, and then a win like that against Mississippi State. So I give them that. I just don't understand how we just can't do that more consistently.
Yeah.
Like, why can't I see this? See the wins come out of it, like where you close it out properly. Playing hard is great, but you got to still do the right things to win the games. And Porter Moser got them working hard. Now he's got to figure out, even though now it's year 4, how to get it to where you can close it, call the right plays, call the right sets, whatever it is. We need to get to that point, but it's still a very impressive win. And like we said, this could have already punched them into there because they got enough quad 1 wins in comparison to others that are on the bubble with them. I think they have the most in comparison. And the SEC has one loss outside of quad 2. So they've put themselves in a situation where there's really no reason for them to not get in now, at least at a 12 seed.
Yeah, they moved up to number 50 in the net rating after the win. But a big reason for it was 9 turnovers. Like, this is a team that has been one of the more turnover happy teams in the SEC, and they only had 9. Jeremiah Fears had just 1. And that was the biggest key. Like, as Mizzou really was pressing down the stretch over the final 6-7 minutes of the game, like, they were making life really, really difficult for Oklahoma to get the ball into the front court. And yet Oklahoma wasn't turning the ball over. I think they had maybe 1 turnover in that final 5-6 minutes or so. One of them was Jeremiah Fears, where he he tried to throw a pass to a cutting Jalen Moore, and it didn't quite get there. Got intercepted in the lane, but it wasn't like a sloppy, ball handling situation, and it wasn't even a bad pass. It was just, an aggressive pass. Yeah. And then there was another one where maybe Bryson Goodwin stepped out, but the shot clock was really, really, really late in the shot clock anyway, and I think it was going to be a violation, so it would have been a turnover. But they weren't loose with the basketball. They were protecting it well. They were making good decisions, and they were beating the press. And that was really, really impressive because at times when defenses get aggressive against Oklahoma, especially in the front court, you see the struggles for them to get a good shot off. Well, they were able to beat the press and get some easy buckets in transition, and that really, really helped them late in the game.
It did. It helped them to be able to close it out. All that matters is that they were able to trade buckets in the second half, late in the game, and prevent Missouri from really making a run. And I know I was listening to people kind of complaining and trying to figure out why they weren't trying to run the clock out. It's like, I think they were trying to run the clock out while at the same time understanding that in some situations you go ahead and get those shots up. The shot clock does run down after a while.
Yeah, when you're Bryson Goodwin and you're left alone in the corner by yourself,
you take it.
You just have to shoot it. You can't tell the shooter not to shoot. Like, what's he going to do? Stand there and hold the basketball? Yes. Would you like him to run clock? Absolutely. But if they're going to leave you 100% wide open, I'm sorry, please shoot the ball. And he missed it the first time, but he made it the second time. So redeemed himself a little bit.
And that was the most important, is he made the second one, and he kept the lead up there to where, I think they got no closer than 8. It was probably about the closest they got down the stretch. So, they got the W in a good way, in a big way, a double-digit win against a ranked team, number 15 in the country as well. So now we wait and see if they actually make it into the tourney.
Yeah, go put Texas out of their misery on Saturday, get another win. You listen, here's why I feel confident that Oklahoma is going to be in the tournament. Why does the tournament exist?
Cinderella's.
Money. To sell ad spots. How do you sell ad spots if you're the NCAA tournament? With stars.
Yeah, and Jeremiah Fears is one of those.
Oklahoma have? They've got a star in Jeremiah Fears. Oklahoma's going to be in the NCAA tournament.
Just because of that. Yeah, everybody wants to see Fears. And like you said, he's a lottery pick. Yep. As of now, he's slated within the top 10 picks. Actually top 10, 15. So because of that, he's one player they need to showcase. He needs to have one of those lottery player runs in the tournament where he's just knocking off top teams it shouldn't be knocking off. He dropped 31 in this game to help his team get to the tourney. And if he keeps showing that confidence and keep growing his game and doing that and getting, if they can win 1, maybe 2 tournament games, unfortunately, y'all, Porter probably ain't going nowhere if they win 2.
No.
They win 1, he might not go nowhere either.
Listen, I don't care. Just go win. I just want to see my team win. If they win a few and Porter's back, okay, he proved that he can get a team to the tournament and he can win a couple games in the tournament. That's what we've been asking for, right?
Yeah, it's true.
As much as I was ready to pack his bags for him and send him out the door because of the way that the month of February went, he's turned it around in the month of March, or I guess the last few weeks. He's turned it around, and he has this team. To me, I think they're a tournament team. If not for this most recent win, but for the fact that they've got a marketable star that's going to get people to tune in to watch this young, should still be in high school phenom.
I know.
The storylines write themselves, Jay.
They do. They really do. They're just writing up everything for us, which is amazing. But, hey, let's see if we can get our lottery pick up there.
Yeah, we'll have everything covered for you here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. You can also go check out his channel on YouTube, Unfair Sports. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com, and you can follow me at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner. Just win, baby.
Just win.